A solicitor from London travels to Transylvania to meet with Count Dracula about purchasing land in England, only to set off a series of diabolical supernatural machinations in the 1970 rendition of Bram Stoker's gothic horror novel, Count Dracula. And that's the movie we're digging up, no pun intended, this week on Movie Bones.
Forgive me for asking, sir, but why do you plan to live in England?
I am not young, and yet I am restless.
And what about this great castle? It is, I presume, the family home.
True. The shadows of my past remain here. We are the second Magyars, but in us flows the blood of many brave races. The blood of Attila is in these veins. The Lombard, the Bulgar, the Turk poured their thousands against our frontiers. We drove them back. The Draculas have ever been the heart's blood, the brains, the sword of our people. One of my race crossed the Danube and destroyed the Turkish host. Though sometimes beaten back, he came again and again against the enemy, till at the end he came alone from the bloody field. For he alone could triumph. This was a Dracula indeed.
We have technical difficulties this week on Movie Bones, and I'm going to blame Count Dracula. At least this version of him. You know what I'm saying?
It's a good thing to blame.
Yeah. What do you want to say? It's like, I was going to start with a joke originally before all this mess happened, and it was basically, what's Count Dracula's favorite web conferencing software?
What is it?
It's Zoom, because this movie zooms in on the pores of every character, every scene. Whenever there's an entrance, whenever there's even the slightest change in the dynamics of, if you want to call dynamics, of the conversations, there is a zoom in on a face. And it doesn't matter. It's like that was the go-to trick for this director. And it was the first thing I noticed about the film. But yeah, that was what I was going to start the episode with. But did it bother you?
There's a lot of things that bother me about this movie. For starters, for those of you that have never read the book Dracula, please don't even attempt to watch this movie. You will never want to read it because you're going to think to yourself, oh, if it's this, then it's bad.
What's funny, though, it is kind of this. The beats are there.
And that's the horrible thing about this movie, is that it does stay very true to the book, except there's so many things that are wrong with the movie that are in the book. I can take you down a list of them right now.
Well, I mean, you're the one who's read the book. This could be an education. So one of the most egregious things about this movie, to me, you go like almost an hour into this film before you ever are introduced to Mina, who is a pivotal character in this book. Also, another pivotal character in this book is Lucy. These are both pivotal characters in the story, and they're there for very specific reasons. And again, you're not introduced to either one of those characters until like the movie is like almost halfway over. You can make even an argument that it's more than halfway over. And then that to me was just the most appalling thing. For those of you that don't know, if you want to know something about Dracula, we're not going to get into the nitty-gritty here, meaning that we're not going to go into like the actual themes of the book Dracula. Those themes are not present in this movie. I want to make that very clear. But Dracula is for its time period, it is an exploration of sorts of sexuality, human sexuality. That's across the spectrum. That's a big part of the story. The autonomy of women is another big theme in the story. It's just not there. It's not there in this movie. And I get like you've got like late 60s or I think 50s. It doesn't matter. You've got like a time period where everyone's kind of like, a bit more prudish, but it's like you should still explore those themes. Other egregious things about the movie, they randomly do this weird thing with
Professor Van Helsing that made no sense whatsoever. Like, all of a sudden, he's just in a wheelchair, and then, like, he's not in a wheelchair. That made no sense to me.
There was a scene, and this is one of the big, like, moments that in the middle of it. The scene has Jonathan Harker and a couple of the other guys, the heroes in the room, talking to Van Helsing over what they're going to do or some such. And everyone leaves the room. And then the camera, again, zooms in because that's their one trick. And on Van Helsing's face. And Herbert Lom, the actor, looks like he's in the middle of having a stroke. And he just kind of collapses. And it's like, and then he's in the wheelchair. It's like, but it's never explained.
But then he comes out of the wheelchair.
Yeah, he's out of the wheelchair again. But it's not like, oh, did Dracula give him a seizure, or did he give him, like, did Dracula do that? But there's no indication of that in the direction. If that's what happened, and there's no indication that none of the other characters acknowledge it. It's just kind of there for the audience to see and nobody else. It was the biggest thing in the movie that I could just kind of like, what was that?
There's like another character in the movie who's in a asylum the whole entire film. He's in the film, in the book, in the film.
Renfield, yeah.
He does, like, the same part, Renfield. Doesn't really play too much of a real role, in my opinion, in this movie. He plays a huge role in the book. Like, it's like, if you're going to not use him, then just cut him out and everything. Because I'm not even sure his character and Dracula ever actually interact.
They did not. I've seen it twice now.
In the book, they do. They interact. You find out that they interact. Oh.
Now, in the 1993 version, which is the only other version of Dracula that actually attempts to follow the story that I've seen personally, Bram Stoker's Dracula. In that one, Renfield is explained as having been Jonathan Harker's predecessor to go out to Transylvania and try to work with Count Dracula on whatever his business is that eventually brings Harker out there. He's the second guy they're throwing into the meat grinder, basically. The first guy came back and they put him in a mental institution because he was so crazy after that encounter. And that kind of made sense. Well, that means he's encountered Dracula before. You would understand why he's all this messed up and kind of quasi-controlled by him and all that stuff. But that's never illustrated here. The closest they got was they said he was on a trip in that region, and some tragedy befell his beloved spouse or daughter or something like that, and he went mad after that encounter. But Dracula is never connected to it directly. It's like he was in the same area as Dracula. It's like what's that? You know?
Another thing, like, I know this is more of a smaller detail, but when you first meet Jonathan, it talks about him being a lawyer.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really understand why they changed his job. Or in the book, he is a real estate agent.
Yeah, I mean,
that's specifically his job.
he's there to. I mean, even here, it's like he's trying to seal a deal with Dracula over the property he's about to take over. So you would think, but he's called a solicitor, which is a lawyer. It's like, but that doesn't make sense because why would a lawyer be coming? It's not intuitive, you know what I mean? It's not intuitive to why would you change that? You know, it's just another question mark.
It makes no sense to me. And then the worst, this isn't really about the actual. Like, because I can keep going on about how they change certain things about this story.
Well, I have other questions, too, because I haven't read the book. But go ahead. Finish your thought.
But I will say my other biggest issue with this movie is how every single character is so deadpan. There is no life in any of these people, minus the one guy who's supposed to not have life.
It's a switcheroo, folks. That's the real twist, you see. That's the real twist. I'm not kidding you.
My favorite scenes were with Christopher Lee. Christopher Lee's always good in everything he's in, to be quite honest with you. But my favorite scenes were with Christopher Lee, and also, even though we didn't get much of them, and you don't really get much of them in the books either, or in the book, but, his three, I don't want to call them brides, let's call them brides of Dracula, but his three brides that are in the book as well, like, that scene was also, I thought that scene was really well done, and everything, but then like every other character just basically they're talking like this throughout the whole entire film. Any kind of shocking thing that happens, they're talking like this. Oh my gosh, that's a very shocking thing. Like every character, there's no life in any of the characters, and you get it in the book because I mean, of course, you're being told, but like their fears, their angst, their excitement on things. One of the things about Van Helsing is how eccentric he is, because he's kind of crazy for starters, but also he's a crazy man who has a knowledge of this whole entire situation. So he's very, even though he doesn't want bad things to happen to people, he's very excitable.
Yeah.
Throughout the, when things are happening. And I don't understand the direction of this movie where everyone was just so basically deadpan. And to give Christopher Lee, again, a little bit of his due, but also maybe pull it back just a little bit, I will say one of the things that I read up on Christopher Lee about being Count Dracula is that the fact that when he shot this movie, it was not the first time he's played Dracula. And so he came into it with some kind of he already had some idea of how to play this character.
Yeah. For some reason, Dracula has always been like that, though. Whether it's Bela Lugosi or Christopher Lee, it's like there are certain actors that have always been, always get, no pun intended, sucked back into the same role again. And I know that Christopher Lee eventually outgrew that part of his career. It helps when you live to be as old as he did, I think, and still be acting right up into the end, almost. But yeah, I mean, so I can only imagine that this version that he put on here was no different than the one he did before, because I can't imagine the director actually giving him anything worthwhile to guide him with, to say, well, this is not that kind of, we're doing Dracula a little bit differently or something like that. I just don't think the director was even all that interested in whatever it is, he was already doing positively. What you can see on screen, there's no indication of that. I do have a question for you.
Okay.
Have you or have you not seen the 1990s version that I talked about earlier?
I know enough about it, but I also don't know enough about it. I've not actually sat down and watched it. I do plan on watching it. I am a stickler for these type of... Okay, folks, I want to tell you this right now. I'm actually not a fan of the Dracula book. I thought it was a bit much. And by a bit much, I mean, as much as I'm talking about how the fact that they've got actual personalities in the book, I thought the book was a bit boring. I won't lie to you. Now, does it have some really good themes? Yes. But, ways that it could be a lot better.
I guess my biggest question about it for someone who's read the book is because the movie in 1993, it bookends the proper narrative. I know is, like you said, is the told through journal entries, but it bookends that whole part of the story with a backstory with Dracula having gone to war. And he leaves his bride behind, who's deeply infatuated in love with, and he conquers in the battlefield. But an enemy arrow shoots through the air with a message on it telling his wife that he's been killed in battle. And in despair, she kills herself. He's put his faith in God that he would have victory, and he says it was all for nothing. I renounce God and all that kind of stuff. Right? That's what he says. He's renouncing God. And that's when he kind of becomes Dracula in that moment. Now, the whole process is he sees Mina's picture. That's part of the story, I think. He shares, Mina's picture is shared. Then he kind of recognizes her as kind of like I don't know, it's not really explicitly said reincarnation, but it's the relationship between the two of them, Mina and Dracula, that kind of brings the heart of the story back to that version of the story, at least. That gave it some extra life. I don't know if the other versions had that, but from what you remember the story, was that part in there at all? No, that was actually created. That was Francis Ford Coppola then. Okay.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that was, I'm almost 100% certain that was just an add-in to it. Because, I mean, he doesn't go after Mina first. That's the big thing. He actually goes after Lucy first. And none of the other stuff, I think, that's not in the book at all. It's not about, his heart being broken or anything like that.
At least in the 1990s version, I did find that actually an additional compelling reason. And it kind of merged nicely with the whole thing you're talking about. But I do think you should watch that one over this one, certainly. It's certainly a better film. And incorporates all the same beats. That's what really frustrates. It has all the same beats. And I can tell, almost, even though I haven't read the book, I can tell which parts are part of the original story by the ones they all have in common with each other. So, but that's why I asked too. So
I will say I appreciate the other movie, the one you're talking about, the 1998 version, for diving into it. And a lot of people do that. They do dive more into it. Not this movie.
In addition to all those problems with the story that we've covered, this is a horror movie that does not understand atmosphere. And because it's not just the characters that are flat, these scenes are so well lit for a horror film. There are no shadows for you to imagine what might be creeping or lurking inside of them. This is a big problem for a horror movie like this. Other movies, there are horror movies of all kinds, but this kind, the gothic horror, you need shadows. I mean, gothic people, what do you think of when you think of gothic? It's dark.
Oh, yeah, me personally, when I think Gothic at this point, I think of Robert Eggers, who did Nosferatu not long ago, and all of his movies have been Gothic horror. And yes, you're right, it is very dark.
Yeah, but dark visually.
Not talking about dark visual. It's dark visually, obviously, but it's got this very dark story to it.
Oh yeah, but in the Gothic story, typically it's and any time when you have a creature kind of horror like this that relies on the shadows, it's like it. And then you don't have shadows. Visually speaking, that just added the extra death knell for this. It's like, even if you kind of fell flat in the story, you could at least create some compelling emotional kind of reaction to the setting. And they can't even do that. I mean, there's some, and yet on the other hand, there's nothing here that I would call as so bad as good either. There's maybe one scene, and maybe you can guess which one it is, that was actually had me laughing. Can you guess what? Can you figure it out?
Was it a bat scene?
It was not a bad scene, although that's not a bad guess. It was actually the scene in the crypt where they're trying to destroy all of the stuff, and all these stuffed animals come to life, in quotes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, where you have basically people just holding these taxidermied, pieces of taxidermy that look like Stevie Wonder was responsible for the work, and and it's like and just swinging them around in front of the camera, but it's like you can practically see their hands moving off screen. That was dumb.
That was bad.
It was so dumb I had to laugh. It was so dumb I laughed.
I understand the technology and the lack thereof at the time.
Like I said, it's the one bit of mild laughter I could chuckle with. I'm not even going to count that towards even being a nuke the fridge moment. Really, I was too mad at the movie otherwise. I don't think there's much else to cover here. I think it's just a really bad movie, folks. So verdict time. I don't think there's much of a guess here. I think I put a tentative number rating in my documents already, penciling in what you were going to rate it, just because I was pretty confident. But this is a don't look at it, man. This is pure don't look at it. For all the reasons we talked about, I can't wait to forget this movie, and I think there's no better way for me to sum up than that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. The only redeeming thing is Christopher Lee. Just go watch his scenes on YouTube. Other than that, I'm not even gonna say. I'm not sure. I don't want to say don't look at it. I want to say burn it with fire.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Which is ironically how they killed Dracula in this movie.
I'm going to change. I see. Now you've done it. Now you made me wrong. I have to change your verdict to a 0 now. There it is.
Well, I mean, it's just so poorly done. I don't want to say don't look at it. I want to say it's not even good enough to make fun of. I don't like the book Dracula. Well, I don't want to say I don't like it. It's not a book that I'm going to go back and read, but I also understand the importance of what that book is and why that book was written and all of that. You have the picture of the book in the movie. And by that, I mean, they did their best to try to do one-to-one scenes, but you don't have why Bram Stoker was writing this book. What his end goal was, what he was trying to say, because you leave all of that out. They left out the nuance. They left out they left out the women, which were an important part of the book. They left out what it means to truly live as a person and what it means to give yourself away, what it means to bring yourself back, what it means to protect yourself. All of that stuff is gone from the movie. And it's replaced with dullness. It's replaced with just dribble. And again, the best part of the movie is quite literally the first 10 to 15 minutes of the movie, because Christopher Lee's doing all he can, and then you've got the Brides of Dracula who are doing all they can. After that's over with,
You kind of surprised me. I did not know this was going to be your first Kill It With Fire.
Yep.
At this time, we'd like to remind the listening audience out there that if you're having fun listening to Ryan and me tear apart bad movies like this and also praise good ones, please do subscribe, comment, and of course, follow us on your podcast purveyor of choice. Tell us if you think we got it all wrong, and go ahead and freely nominate some movies you'd like us to see do, especially if they're for free, because this experience comes with no strings attached. Guaranteed. And on that note, Ryan, we have a film coming up next week. It's very different from this one. Tell the audience about it.
This next film stars Leslie Howard, Francis L. Sullivan, and Mary Morris. It's directed by Leslie Howard himself. The synopsis is...
this is my own synopsis. It didn't have it on Internet Archive.
Okay. The next film... It is an updated, so to speak, version of the Scarlet Pimpernel, which that takes the premise of smuggling out persecuted nobles for persecuted artists, writers, and scientists in Nazi Germany. This film is titled Pimpernel Smith.
Yes. And this is one I have seen before, and I won't tell you more than that, and I know you haven't seen it yet, so I'm looking forward to seeing your reaction from it. So, yeah, we got some good movies coming up here. So, I guess that's all there is to say. We'll see you guys next week, and Ryan, I'll see you next week.
See you next week.
In hopes of a better movie.